first thing you want to learn when you hit Alcatraz is keep your mouth shut, walk with your back to the wall.
Thank you for joining us on our tour of the Alcatraz Cellhouse. You should now be standing under the sign that says Tour Begins Here. On your right, look for a photo panel entitled Tour Narrators. Walk over to it.
Walk, do not run when moving from one place to another.
I'm Pat Mahoney, former Alcatraz correctional officer, and I'll be your guide. I served 7 years on the Rock. These first photos introduce some of my fellow officers.
I am Philip Bergen, Captain of the Guards, United States Penitentiary, Alcatraz, California.
Well, my name is George DeVincenzi. I used to play checkers with Robert Stroud. I don't think I ever beat him.
My name is Ronald Battles. I asked whether they hired blacks out there. You know how it was in the 50s.
Continue to the left to the next photo panel. These are some of the prisoners whose voices you'll hear.
Yeah, my name is Leon Whitey Thompson. My number was 1465. I was a man that had total hatred in them days. I hated anything that walked or crawled on this earth. I was a man who was dead inside. You couldn't hurt me no more, see.
I'm John Banner. My Alcatraz number was 1133. I'm a thief, you know. I ended up about number 17 or something like that on the most wanted.
You were a number, you weren't a name. I wasn't Jim Quill, and hell, I was number 586. Everybody wants to be an individual. They want to be a human. And you weren't at the Rock.
My name is Darwin Kuhn, number 1422. Figured I'm never going to get out. Yeah, I'm going to sit right here until I die.
Now, continue to your left. Up ahead, you'll see an open gate on your right. This was called the cutoff. Walk through the cutoff. The Alcatraz Cellhouse opened as a federal prison in 1934. Within these walls lived the country's toughest, most dangerous, and most famous prisoners. As soon as you exit the cutoff, immediately turn right onto the next corridor. It's called Broadway. Walk slowly along the line of cells on the right side. Each cell has a number above the cell door. On your right, find cell number 113. Stop and look inside. Broadway was the first stop for arriving prisoners.
We went right down Broadway, in our birthday suits. And all the guys, howling and
Well, here's a typical Alcatraz cell. Every one of them in the cell house exactly like.
I had a metal tabletop and a little chair there, and that was about it. So it was barren.
5 feet wide, 9 feet long, 7 feet high. That's what I call a little box.
No decorations allowed, anything. Couldn't paste anything on the wall.
Continue to the next cell. Waiting on the bed for each new prisoner was a copy of the official rules and regulations.
This is the rules of the cell house. Your cell is subject to search at any time.
Your towel had to be folded up and put on your shelf. Your toothbrush, and they used to give us tooth powder in little green containers.
Now, continue ahead to the next cell.
I guess like a cockroach feels in a matchbox.
You may smoke in your cell, in the library.
We were issued a pack of wings on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. Every inmate, whether he smoked or not.
Continue to the next cell.
Sweep your cell and place the trash in the trash
I
bin.
knew every mark, everything in that cell. And pretty soon that cell became like a part of me, or I became a part of the cell.
Look ahead to the far end of Broadway. You should see a clock on the wall. Walk towards it.
Alcatraz was always classed as the end of the line, the point of no return. It was like going into the ground. You know, when you're buried, you're gone forever.
Beneath it is the area prisoners call Times Square. When you get to Times Square, turn left. Look over towards the right and find the large photo of the prison recreation yard. Walk over to it.
This is the rules of the cell house. Your cell is subject to search at any time.
Prisoners had a decision to make, whether to obey the rules or not, to do good time or bad time. That decision affected their lives dramatically.
An inmate is given housing, good food, medical attention, and all the necessities of life.
Everything else was a privilege. Time to exercise outside, getting books and mail all had to be earned. One of their favorite privileges was the recreation yard.
The most pleasant place, I believe, on Alcatraz, and the most appreciated. The handball court, the horseshoe court.
Prisoners also played bridge out in the yard. They used dominoes instead of cards.
They came out with a system called Auto Bridge. You played it all by yourself. Guys got so wound up in this bridge thing that they ate and slept it. They'd go out there and it would be so cold that you didn't think you could stay out there. Yet they'd stay out there for 3 hours and play bridge. And if you're occupied with bridge and you're studying bridge, you're not thinking about going over the wall.
Prisoners who chose not to behave ended up in a harsher place, isolation. You should be facing the photo panel. Look to your left. Directly ahead is an open steel door marked D block. Go through this door. D block was a prison within Alcatraz, the treatment unit.
This place is going to operate on the basis that you do what you're told, and you're going to get a fair break. If you don't behave yourself, we're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Move a few steps into the room and find a place to stand. Look up at the 3 tiers of cells. Unruly or violent prisoners were sent here. They stayed in their cells 24 hours a day. Typically, they were only allowed out once a week for a shower and exercise.
Now in this cell block, we have 42 of the least popular cells in Alcatraz. Although by far they are the best, the roomiest, and the nicest state-of-the-art cells that were available in this prison.
It was cold, it was damp. The wind used to just blow through there. You could hear it. At night you could hear it whistling through the windows.
One of the more infamous prisoners to live here in D Block was convicted killer Robert Stroud, the so-called Birdman.
And almost immediately upon his arrival at Alcatraz, he was relegated to the treatment unit. And he didn't bring his birds along with him, which made him very unhappy, but he brought all his bad habits with him, which made us unhappy. And there he remained for several years, being obnoxious and noisy and agitating and busily writing. Fluent in 3 languages, a mathematical expert, brilliant man.
He was a psychopath.
Suicidal, homicidal maniac.
Now, turn to face the windows. Walk over to the photo panel on the wall. You'll see a photo of Robert Stroud. Alongside Stroud, you'll see some other well-known prisoners. Alcatraz was built for men like these.
Alvin Karpis, you got to watch out for him. Former public enemy #1.
Creepy Karpis. When you seen Creepy, you wouldn't have to be told he was creepy because he walked on his toes.
You had Kelly.
Machine Gun Kelly.
Nice fella, never give you any troubles at all. Very accommodating, polite.
Mickey Cohen, Frankie Garbo.
And Capone.
Ain't a fool with Capone, see? He was a street fighter. He's a big man. He was in good shape. The only thing, his brain was gone. He had syphilis. Well, eventually it drove him crazy.
Now, turn back to the cells. Walk over to the cells on the far right with solid green doors. This was solitary confinement, the whole, cells 9 through 14.
When the cell was occupied, the regulations required that the light be on.
But we kept the lights off when they were in there. They were in the dark.
You may enter one of the cells if you wish.
Well, when I'd go in the hole, what I used to do was I'd tear a button off my coveralls. I'd flip it up in the air. Then I'd turn around in circles. Then I'd get down on my hands and knees and I'd hunt for that button. And when I found the button, I'd stand up, I'd do it again.
But if you would close your eyes, like right now, close your eyes and seal your eyes up with your hand, with a little concentration, you can see a light. And pretty soon that light will get brighter. And you got to concentrate on this. And after a while, not a short while, this takes time and practice, but pretty soon you can almost put your own TV there. And you can see things. And you can go on trips. And this is what I did.
Now, open your eyes. Step out of the hole. Walk through the nearest doorway marked library. Continue into the large open area. This was the prison library.
You put your request on a library card. If the book was available, they'd bring it and put it in the bars for you.
Prisoners with reading privileges could subscribe to approved magazines.
And if it had some story about some convict out of Nebraska or something, that was cut out. Never mind that you might have been reading a serial and it was on the back of one of them pages.
Prisoners who behaved could also take correspondence courses.
Took a course from the University of Pennsylvania on animal husbandry. The gestation period for a pig is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days.
Now, let's continue. Stop at the first furnished cell. Most accepted that this cell block, however grim, was home for now. Some considered this sunny area the most desirable part of the prison to live.
It was like coming back and greeting an old friend, really.
Take a look into the cells.
I used to do a lot of oil paintings on Alcatraz. If I was painting a scene of the Swiss Alps or something like that, hey, I'm right up there skiing as I'm painting, and I used to escape that way.
My grandmother taught me how to crochet when I was a kid. So I taught a lot of guys how to crochet. Big tough guys sitting in there with a needle and crocheting.
Move on to the next cell. In the 1950s, radios were installed at Alcatraz. You might have noticed what looks like a light switch box with 2 holes. Prisoners plugged their earphones in there to listen to the radio.
We had 2 stations we could plug into. They let us listen to such programs as Boston Blackie,
Pelican, How Gun Would Travel,
baseball games, and basketball games.
Move on to the next cell.
At nighttime, between 6:30 and 7:30, they have what they call a music hour. They play harmonicas or a guitar or whatnot. They had one guy over there, and he used to play one of these slide trombones. And I think he only knew 3 notes, da da da, da da da. For an hour, that's all I hear, ta ta ta, ta ta ta.
New Year's Eve, everybody had a saxophone or a clarinet or a guitar or whatever started playing. Then they'd take their tin cups and they'd rack them back and forth across the front of the bars.
Turn around and look up at the windows. They face San Francisco and the setting sun.
The yacht club, which was directly across from the island, would always have a big New Year's party. If the wind was blowing from that direction to the rock, you could actually hear people laughing, you could hear music, you could hear girls laughing, you could hear all the sounds that were coming from the free world at the rock. But New Year's was always the night we heard it.
Continue to the end of Seedy Street. When you get there, turn left. Look for 4 small windows in the wall on the right. They're marked Visitation. The prisoners called this Pekin Place.
And when they'd written me that letter and said, you know, you're dead, don't ever come back, we've told your sister you're dead, the whole bit. You know, I'd been there at the Rock 7.5 years. The guard came up and racked my door open and said, Quillen? And I said, yeah. Or said 586, and I said, yeah. You got a visitor? And I told him, I said, you're full of crap. He said, you got a damn visitor, go down to the visiting office.
Approach the visitors' windows.
I thought, hell, I'll see some good-looking chick at least, if nothing else, you know. And I walked up there, and here's this good-looking girl.
I was nervous, didn't know what to expect.
I knew who she was when I got a real good look at her, and when she said Jimmy, which was what she always called me, hell, I knew it was my sis.
Once I saw Jimmy, it was, you know, he didn't look different, and he was overwhelmed, and he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it, that we were there and that I had grown up and that I'd come to see him.
Let's continue. Directly ahead, on the right, look for an open gate with a sign that reads Administration Wing. Walk through this door. Prisoners rarely saw the world behind this door. We're now entering officers' country. Walk along the left side of the corridor. We're passing the prison control room on your right, but keep walking. We'll stop here again later. Turn left into the first doorway up ahead. Officers reported for duty in this room. This is where the business of running the prison took place. They said, okay, fall in. Step up to the mannequin in the glass case. This is a typical Alcatraz officer's uniform.
Uniform was prison gray with a hat.
I wore a hat all the time.
Regular double-breasted uniform.
And they used to call you red ties because everybody in the place had this red tie on.
Even supplied your shoes and your socks. Didn't look like a policeman. You didn't look like a social worker.
The only thing that you had when you went in the cell house was a whistle.
I carried a sap. We weren't supposed to, but many of us did.
Unlike the prisoners, officers could leave the prison. Many officers lived right here on the island. Walk over to the large window and take a look out.
When you got done work, you just run down, catch the next boat, and you're in San Francisco in 12 minutes. And you can stay, go to a movie, have dinner, catch the last boat back.
Just to the left of the plaza is what remains of the warden's house. Officers' housing was just down over the hill.
Well, my name is William Long. We had quite a little community there on Alcatraz.
That included wives and children.
My mother was putting me to bed one night, and I could hear the prisoners, they were yelling and just raising a ruckus, and I said, what is that noise? And she said, oh, just the prisoners letting off steam. I'm Jolene Babiak, and I lived on Alcatraz as a child.
We all worked together. We all played together. We had 2 bowling alleys where we had bowling leagues.
We never locked our doors or anything on the island. Never.
We had a little grocery store. It was like living in a very small town.
Now continue through the nearest open doorway. Keep walking through the next small room. The larger room up ahead is the warden's office.
I never did see what it looked like inside the warden's office. The only time I ever found out what it looked like is when I come back as a tourist.
Alcatraz had 4 wardens over its 29-year span. Walk over to their photos. The prison opened in 1934 under the strict discipline of Warden James Johnston.
They call him Saltwater Johnson, see? Things start to change when the new warden come in. They open up a little more.
Move to the next photo.
Yeah, Warden Ed Swope. Nobody wanted to tangle with Swope. The convicts called him the devil.
Next was Warden Paul Madigan.
And his nickname was Promising Paul. He'd promise you everything and never give you nothing.
The last warden was Olin Blackwell. He was in charge when the prison closed.
Oh, Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Blackwell was a character. He was a Texan and a really nice guy.
Now continue through the next doorway and walk outside. Immediately turn right. We're only going to be outside for a short time. Keep moving along the walkway to the open area up ahead. When you get there, find a place to stand where you can see San Francisco.
You couldn't beat Alcatraz for the beautiful view there.
So there was never a day you didn't see what the hell you were losing and what you were missing, you know? It was all there for you to see. There's life. There's everything I want in my life, and it's there. It's a mile or a mile and a half away, and yet I can't get to it.
If you find it cold out here, you may walk through the green doors into the front of the cell house. Just inside, turn left and you can look out the windows at the bay.
My father was Arthur M. Dollison. In 1961, he became the associate warden.
On June 12, 1962, Associate Warden Arthur Dollison was in charge, while Warden Blackwell was away on a 2-week fishing vacation.
My father was already up at 7 o'clock in the morning, having his breakfast, and the phone rang. And he told me later that he reached to that phone with dread because he knew that wasn't going to be good news.
Art Dollison got the news that there had been an escape. 3 men were missing from the cell house.
We all believed in the escape-proof myth, and this turned out to be one of the most sophisticated escape attempts in U.S. history.
When they heard the escape siren, every officer on the island rushed here to report for duty. Prison authorities had made their own plans in case of escape.
The escape response plans were located in a locked safe, and so my father had to go and get the key or the combination and unlock the safe, and then that would determine which officers were armed, where they were positioned, and make sure that all the bases were covered in any kind of an escape.
Now go back and continue down the corridor along the left side. Walk back into the cell block.
Yeah, I wanted to escape. That was in my mind constantly.
You cannot take away from a man the thought that he wants his freedom.
As you re-enter the cell block, immediately turn right. We're heading for what the inmates call Michigan Avenue. When you get there, cross over to the cells on your right. Walk to the large photo panel up ahead. Earlier, on the morning of June the 12th, 1962, Officer Bill Long had been in charge of the first count of the day.
And at the sound of the bell, the inmates are supposed to be dressed and up, standing in front of their doors for count. Bill, there's a guy up here, I can't get up. Well, it's the sergeant says, I'll get him up.
Look across the aisle for cell number 138.
I'll wake him up.
Walk over to it and look inside.
Hey!
And he was laying in there, so I reached in through the bars and I hit the pillow. And Lord knows what happened. The head fell off on the floor. The guy said that I shot back about 6. There's his face, there's his head, hair on his head and everything. One of the other officers there said, here's another one, Bill, right here. There's one up here, Bill. And I said, don't touch him. Don't touch it with a horror movie. And I was right in the middle of it.
You should be facing the cells. Continue to your left to cells number 150 and 152. Prisoners Frank Lee Morris and 2 brothers John and Clarence Anglin had escaped the night before. They made dummy heads to fool the officers. Morris was the brains. The Anglin brothers, they were just swamp rats out of Florida. According to the reports, the men enlarged the vent openings in the back of their cells with stolen spoons.
I'll give you a ton of spoons, and I want to see how long it'll take you to go through one of them walls there. Them walls may be old, but let me tell you, you're not going through them cells with them spoons.
They didn't make those holes with spoon handles. They had the necessary tools. hammers and chisels and drills.
No one thought it was possible to get through concrete using spoons, but in fact they were heavy gauge steel, and you break off the bowl and now you've got a drill. And in fact 13 spoon handles and a ladle handle were actually found hidden in 2 cans of cement paint after the escape was over.
Now, continue to your left to the end of the cell block. Turn right. Just around the corner, look for a glass door. Inside is the utility corridor. The 3 men climbed up these pipes to the roof.
At approximately 10:30 that night, there was a sound like a hubcap when you're dropping it, goes, but very loud.
They worked for over a year to get up onto that roof, and that would have been the most fantastic moment, to have stood there knowing that you actually got out of the most secure building in the country.
The question has never been answered. Did they make it to freedom?
My theory is that they drowned.
They went to South America, because I know they were all studying Spanish.
The men have never been found. Face the utility corridor. To your left is Broadway. Continue around the corner and back onto Broadway. Stay to your left and walk slowly down the corridor. Imagine it is nighttime and the cell house is dark.
Lights went out around 9:30 at night, and that was it.
It was dead quiet. Quiet like a mausoleum.
It was kind of scary walking around those dark tiers, and some would sleep with their eyes open, some grind their teeth, some talk in their sleep.
You lay awake a long time.
I could sit out there in True Tower at nighttime and see the full moon come up.
Continue slowly down Broadway past the cutoff toward Times Square.
In the housing of inmates at Alcatraz, it was deemed necessary to keep the blacks separate from the whites.
At that time, Alcatraz mirrored American society. This part of Broadway was a segregated section for black prisoners. Stop when you get to the end of the cell block.
Mexicans, Indians, whites, they could all cell next to each other. The only ones that couldn't was blacks.
They tried it when they opened up, and they had such a high population of hostile rednecks and such a low population comparably of blacks that they soon found out they couldn't do it.
They finally integrated all the other penitentiaries, but not Alcatraz. Of the 100 or so officers, only a handful were black.
It was very difficult for the black officers. They got rid of anybody with an education because their feeling was someday that guy is going to be my boss.
You should now be at the end of the corridor. This is the area known as Times Square. Directly ahead of you is the dining hall. Step through the doorway and move toward the bars at the back of the dining hall. 3 times a day, all the men in general population gathered here for 20-minute meals. Imagine 200 plus men, each armed with a knife, fork, and spoon. This was potentially the most dangerous room in the cell house.
And if you notice up on the ceiling there, you see these canisters up there dotted around. That's tear gas. And we nicknamed the dining room the gas chamber. It so happened during the history of Alcatraz they never did trip the button. If they did trip it, they would have made a fatal mistake because them 2 guards in there and the lieutenant would never have gotten out of there alive.
Now walk to the barred area at the far end of the dining room. Behind it is the kitchen area. Notice the knife rack on the left. The shape of each knife was outlined on the rack. This way, officers could tell immediately if one was missing. Even so, some knives disappeared.
I think about 3-4 men got killed with kitchenware.
and I heard that old familiar pop slap, and Chili had drove it into Sosa's back. It was just like an ice pick. He stuck it right in the back, and that was the pop slap I heard.
Feel free to sit on one of the benches.
Alcatraz, I don't think you ever heard anybody say anything disparaging about the meals.
It was a strict requirement of the Bureau of Prisons that the food not only be palatable and healthy, but attractively served.
When they first started making spaghetti and putting it on the line, it was pretty good. And it kept going down and down and down.
Noodles and plum juice.
So somebody said, damn it, the next time they put that spaghetti out on the line, we're going to turn the tables over. The following week, there was a damn spaghetti.
Pretty soon all the tables are coming like domino. Pop, 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 pop.
And the lives of those officers in that dining room were in jeopardy. And so old Bergen just took it in hand and took that Thompson and knocked out 3 panes of glass. Buck, waited, buck, waited, buck, knocked out the 3rd. Got everybody's attention. I jammed that actuating lever back and she went click and they all heard it and they knew what it meant. And I said, Lieutenant, blow your whistle, just quietly. He blew his whistle. Inmates started to get up and they marched out of the dining room just like little lambs.
At the end of 3 decades, over 1,500 men had served time on the Rock. By then, Alcatraz had served its own time. After years of harsh wind and weather, the buildings were badly deteriorated. The isolated island was too expensive to run. And now in the 1960s, prison reformers preached rehabilitation instead of punishment. Early in 1963, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy ordered Alcatraz closed. Look back toward the dining hall entrance. Walk over to the large photo of prisoners walking down Broadway. They were the last prisoners to leave the Rock on March 21st, 1963.
The last day we were there, we ate breakfast in the dining room, showered, and put on clean uniforms and shackles and handcuffs, and down to the boat.
I saw the last inmate leave. The last inmate leave.
And I went from hell to heaven. And when I stop and think what I was doing over there, locked up in those gun galleries and towers and wrestling inmates, and yes, heaven and hell.
And I remember when they released me. I've been locked up 15 years, and during all this time I never had no visits, no letters, no nothing. And I'm watching the cars whizzing by and the people walking. Everything was moving too fast, and I didn't know how to move with it. And then I remember how envious I was of these people, because they all had a destination. They were all going someplace, and I didn't know where I was going. And I was scared to death.
On behalf of the National Park Service and the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, thank you for taking the Alcatraz Cellhouse tour and supporting America's national parks. Now you'll be returning downstairs. Walk back toward the dining room door. Do not exit. Follow the signs pointing to the stairway on your left. Please hold the handrails as you go down the stairs. We'll take your player as you exit. A brief reminder, all tour equipment is electronically protected against theft and will trigger alarms if taken aboard the boat. Goodbye, and thank you for visiting Alcatraz. This has been an Antenna Audio production.